Hi guys, this is Rachel Kirkland, the Modern Shaman. Thank you for joining me for this question and answer time. If you are new to me and my world, first of all, welcome. Thanks for joining me. I do these question and answer times about once a week on my YouTube channel, so feel free to send me any questions that you might have. Just visit my website. There's a little form there on the Contact Me page, and you can send me your questions and I'll answer them in this video format. All right, so let's get down to the question today. All right, so this question actually stemmed from a live feed that I did last week, and I wasn't able to get to it during the live feed, so I wanted to answer it now. If you're not a part of my live feeds, I'll invite you to that also. So I do live feeds, which are also just kind of question and answer and topical feedback from anyone who wants to join in on the conversation on Sundays at noon Central Standard Time. I'm in Texas, so my time zone at noon, from noon to 1 on Sundays, unless I have some sort of event or something that I'm speaking at. Otherwise, it's on Sundays at noon. So, that being said, this question was one that was raised there. I'm going to read it and then I'll jump into answering it. Hi Rachel, so grateful for you assisting our growth and opening to more understanding and love. My question stems from the channeled messages which created the book The Law of One. Can you speak about the next harvest as mentioned in The Law of One, and more of service to others, if service to others includes service to oneself? I ask as I do wish to be a part of this harvest/ascension, and I feel I have so much service to do for my own oneself, to love and accept myself more fully, while at the same time feeling a pull or possibly thinking that I must do selfless service more. So a question about the idea that's discussed in the Law of One of the harvest, or the ascension, which is a time of moving into higher dimensional planes on the earth. It's very similar to the harvest discussed in Revelation, where there's a certain number of people that make it to this higher vibrational earth, or this heavenly earth, and then there's some that are lower vibrational or that don't make the cut. And I mean, I'm laughing, but essentially that topic is discussed really in a lot of religious literature and just patterns with religious figures. I mean, you look at Noah and the destruction of the earth via water and flood back in that time, where God says that the earth has turned unkind, evil, but that, oral tradition of that word in Aramaic, unkind, and violent to one another, and therefore needed to be wiped out. So it's a similar feeling of people being very self-focused, being mean to others to an extreme, violent to others. Same with Sodom and Gomorrah. I know a lot of people assume that was because of sexual acts, but if you look at Ezekiel, if you've ever read the Bible, in Ezekiel it says that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed when they asked God about it. God says it was destroyed because of its haughtiness, its pride, and its not taking care of its own poor and needy. That was the reason that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. So there's a lot of examples. Those are just biblical examples, but the Law of One also goes into it, and I think they say the Law of One was channel material in the 80s, like the 80s through the early 90s, channeled from a being Ra, named Ra, the Egyptian Ra. And I believe at that time there were 300,000 souls ready for ascension and ascension status. I think that's in the early 90s. I'm not sure what book that was in, if that was like towards the end, towards book 5, or what book they talk about. But there's always a number. The Christian number is 144,000 that are going to make it into this cut from the harvest. So there seems to always be a number predicted, and it seems to always get people up in arms about like, I want to make the cut. I want to make the cut. What do I need to do to make the cut? In the Law of One, they talk about needing your percentage needing to be more service to others instead of service to self. Those are the distinctions that Ra gives. And it's a little tricky. Your question about does service to others include service to oneself? It's similar to, in the Bible it says love your neighbor as yourself. So it already assumes you love yourself. And it's using that as a comparative to how you should love your neighbor. I would say it is impossible to love someone else if you don't love yourself. Okay? But I would also say no one is devoid of love. Love is the core vibrational state of Source. It's where we all come from. So, yes, it includes love of self. If you didn't love yourself, you wouldn't know how to love someone else. Okay? You wouldn't know what that's supposed to look like. You wouldn't know how it's supposed to feel if you hadn't felt it yourself. So that's kind of a given. It's kind of assumed. When you make that distinction between needing to feel love for yourself, acceptance for yourself more fully, there's a balance there. I feel like the more you are in service to others and giving to others, the more you grow in yourself. And the more you grow in yourself, love and self-empowerment, the more you find your place in the service to others. So, for example, I use myself, okay? The more and more that I work on myself, the more I feel empowered to share that with others, the more I feel very clear on my purpose within humanity, within the whole. So even though I'm empowering the self, my purpose in self is for others. That makes sense, okay? And I find that to be true. It's the perfect balance. That as you are working on your own personal empowerment, and you can call that love of self, acceptance of self, the fullness of your divinity, and embodying the fullness of your divine self. The more and more you embody that, the more it includes the whole. The bigger you get, the more inclusive you are of the whole. And the more inclusive your purpose on earth is to that of humanity. So, you don't have to choose. They're actually not mutually exclusive. When the Law of One makes a distinction, and throughout the Bible they make that distinction also, like I said, also when they talk about separating the wheat from the chaff, and Jesus gives an example of what gets people into heaven, or what gets, separated the wheat from the chaff. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was in prison, you came to visit me. It's all acts of service to others. So it's a similar expression of how the balance is kind of understood and perceived, not judged. but how that balance within the self is perceived, because through your growth, the natural outpouring is your love for humanity and your role within humanity, and however that looks. Whether it's someone like Mother Teresa, or it's someone who owns a company that makes a lot of clothes at an inexpensive price and, gives them to as many people as possible. Or someone who chooses one single human being and chooses to devote their entire loving life to that person. It's all a matter of the heart and not what it looks like on the outside anyways. Service to self beings, or that energy, that polarity, is an extreme love of self, okay? It is a strange, twisted form of love, because everything in the core vibration is love. It's just so much so. It's like when people ask, why do people do horrible, horrible things? People do it because they have the feeling that in some way it's going to make them feel better. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it to make themselves feel worse. Even when we do things that are physically harmful to others, or there's a state in that person that's doing it that feels like it's going to make them feel better. And so that twisted kind of sense of love of self over love of others is to the extreme. And a lot of the examples are given in pride, and given in arrogance and haughtiness, and refusing to help. Basically going against your internal guidance, your conscience, your spiritual divinity that's within you, that guides you towards compassion, that guides you moment to moment towards living out your highest vibrational self. So oh, this needs to be another video because I'm already at 12 minutes. I'm also just thinking about this harvest and this idea, and want to talk a little bit more about what I think that will look like. Because we as a cultural society, as humans over the millennia, have always tended to think that these are going to come in dramatic, sweeping, movie-like experiences, where somebody suddenly dissolves from, our vision, or we suddenly are swept up in some sort of cosmic cloud and taken into this other new earth. Maybe that will happen, but in my experience, that's not the way that spirit works. It's very organic and integrated. And we've gotten in trouble as cultural communities by assuming we know how the Savior is going to come in and save us, or assuming we know what the ascension process is going to look like, or the harvest is going to look like. We get it wrong. So let's just assume we don't know what it's going to look like, okay? And let's work that way. Let's just assume that it will be so integrated into who you are that you may not even notice, that it will be so much a part of your personal process, integrated into the whole, and the whole of humanity's process, that you won't see it until hindsight. That's how I feel about it, at least. That we are always ascending, always. And with the more and more heartfelt desire not from fear, not from fear of being left behind, but from love of yourself and for your fellow humanity, out of love, a genuine heart of love, that you are ascending, that you were part of that ascension process, and that it is happening now, because it will happen in the now. And in my experience, and maybe this is just my life and the way I experience it, just like with the psychic senses or looking at the future or remote viewing or being able to move my consciousness somewhere. These things sound so crazy and out of this world, but they are so intuitive and organic and natural to our spirit that we miss it, that we just overlook it because it is so much who we are. So that's my intuitive kind of hit on this as well, that this ascension process is so much what we're going through, that we're so just floating in, the web of it, just floating in the sea of this ascension process, that I don't know that we'll see it while we're going through it. It's like the drop of the ocean doesn't know it's the ocean. We're in it. So trust that all is well, that you were part of the process, that you're beautifully fulfilling everything that comes your way in the perfect time, that you are an ascended, beautiful being, that your purpose is divine and heralded in the angelic realm, and that you're accomplishing what you came here to accomplish, all of that, because you are. I love you. Blessings.